Going down, it's your girl J.Renae. You know, I always have something to say. You already know who I am. Podcast host of Houston Trend, podcast host of The Weekend Takeover, and writer for The Source. You already know who it is. Let's get started. We have a special guest in the building. We have DJ Swivel.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. That was a great intro.
Thank you. What I want to congratulate you on is happy albumversary, 10 years of the Beyonce 4 albums that you were head producer, mixer, and master, right?
I was her engineer. I did a little additional production stuff here and there, but I'll claim the title of engineer for the project. Yeah.
How was that working with her in that space, and what was how did that even come about, that relationship?
So at the time, this was I started working with her in 2010. So at the time, I was Fabulous's engineer, and working with him. His assistant at the time was a good friend of mine, Ariane. And at the time, she was dating a guy named Omar Grant, who's now the president of Rock Nation.
Oh.
And Omar's background, he had been like he's friends with Lenny S. That's how I met him, because Lenny was Fabulous's A&R at the time at Def Jam. And he, I guess, in his past had like been the tour manager for Destiny's Child. So he had a good relationship with like, whether it was like B or All the Girls or Matthew Knowles or whatever. He was in that crew in some way. And I guess she needed an engineer. At the time, I was told it was a fill-in. Her existing engineer, forgetting his name now, I think it was Jim Caruana or something like that. I think Jim was sick or something. I was just told she needed a fill-in. And Omar called me and was like, hey, could you fill in for B's engineer? I was like, hell yeah, I could do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. So he's like, great. Show up at this studio, Rock the Mic Studios in New York. And whatever. So I show up, and B doesn't show up. And then I came back another day, and she finally showed up, and we did a couple days of sessions, and then she went on vacation. And I thought she was gone for like 6 weeks. And I thought, oh, well, that was fun. I got to meet her. That was great. Like checked that off on the bucket list. And, but there was never any thought that I would be like her full-time engineer. And then 6 weeks later, she comes back from vacation. I get another call like from her assistant. She said, hey, can you come in and work with B again? She liked working with you. I was like, yeah, sure. Happy to do it. So I come in, and then she brought Shay Taylor in the same day. And that was the day when she decided, I guess she was gonna, or at least when she told us she wanted to work on an album and she wanted me to record it. So yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
And so for how long have you and Beyonce actually worked together, as far as, you know?
So we worked together from 2010 to 2012. So I did the whole 4 album, and then some of that ended up on the following album, the self-titled album.
Oh, the Beyonce album.
Yeah, exactly, the Beyonce album. And then, yeah, so that was primarily my window of time with her. And then sort of and I kind of moved on and started focusing more on mixing and production and other aspects of music. I didn't really want to be, before we started the show, we were talking about like bosses and things like that. And I really thrive in an environment where I control my destiny. And when you're a recording engineer, you're kind of on call like 24/7. And especially Beyonce, like I'm telling you right now, nobody works harder than that woman. So when you're working with her, you're like, it's on, right? And it's pretty exhausting, and it's a lot of work, and you really have no control over your schedule whatsoever. It's tough to have a social life. It's tough to do anything outside of what she needs. And so I just got to a point where I was like, there's more opportunity and more things that I want to do over here. So I just focused on that.
And I think it was a video of where you compared her vocals to, was it a layer of cake, or you compared her vocals to?
Oh, the guitar vocal riff thing where she, yeah. So I graduated from a school called Full Sail University in Florida. And every year I go back to the university and I do like mentorship stuff with the students and master classes. And I kind of do my, I think education is really important. And, so I like to go back and give back to the school. I'm also part of their Hall of Fame program. So they had invited me back to the school to sort of share my experience of working with B and working professionally in the industry and what that's like, and helping getting their students prepared for the workplace. And so I went back and one of the songs that I had mixed on that Beyonce album, I Care, I thought I would break down that song for the students and show them how it came to be. And what I loved about that song, there was that one moment kind of in the bridge where there's like a guitar solo and she just copies the guitar solo with her voice, but it's like to perfect precision. It's like so good. And that was like, I didn't know that would become like some sort of viral moment, but it somehow did. And, a lot of people, it just shows off how skilled she really is. But I always joke, as skilled as she is as a singer and great dancer and all the other talents that you might attribute to Beyonce, her real superpower is the work ethic. Nobody can work as hard as she works. And that to me is that's the separating thing. Cause there's lots of great singers who are maybe just as good technically as a singer as Beyonce or, whatever, but nobody on planet Earth, I'm convinced. I'm sure there's a few people, but in my experience, nobody works harder than her. So that's the real superpower.
And what was it like to receive that Grammy?
So we won a Grammy. It's actually, there's a plaque on the wall over here. You can't see it, for Love on Top. And that was, I think, well-deserved and one of my favorite songs I've ever worked on. And just a special, timeless type of record. But it's sort of a misconception. In the Grammys, if your song wins, only the participants in certain categories will get a trophy and everybody else will get a certificate plaque thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So in that category, the category was, well, let me just read. What was it? Best traditional R&B vocal performance. So that's a vocalist award. So the only person in that scenario who gets the trophy is Beyonce. I don't believe the producer gets the trophy. I don't believe the mixer engineer, nobody gets a trophy just because it's a vocal performance thing. Whereas in album of the year, all the engineers, all the mixers, all the producers, all the songwriters, everybody participates in album of the year, record of the year. So that was the first Grammy win, but not the first time I took home a trophy. That was for the Chainsmokers years later.
Okay, so you haven't just worked for Beyonce. You worked with Rihanna, Jay-Z, the Chainsmokers, BTS.
BTS has been big recently, yeah.
So how does all that, I'm so I don't know,
how does it come about?
Yes, I'm so amazed by that.
So I'll give you the brief backstory on my career. So I'm from Toronto, born and raised. When I was 18 or 19, I went down to Full Sail for school. And I knew I wanted to have a career in America because at the time, Canada didn't have a big music scene. This is pre-Drake. This is pre-Justin Bieber. And not that Justin spends a lot of time working in Canada anyways. It was
like Deborah Cox type.
Yeah, Deborah Cox. Yeah, throwback. Deborah Cox, Avril Lavigne. I guess this is a few years removed from Alanis Morissette, but Celine Dion. There was Sum 41. There was a few Fifi Dobson. We had at that moment in life, early mid 2000s. There was Canadian artists who were bubbling, but nobody who really took control of the world the way that Drake did, right? And Drake still lives in Canada. He's got a house in LA, but what I love about what Drake did is he records all his records in Canada or most of them. And if you want to work with Drake and you're a producer and he wants to work with you, you got to go to Toronto. And I love that. But that didn't exist. So I was like, I got to go to where the artists that I want to work with are, and that's New York. So I needed to find a way to get to New York. Didn't have a visa. I thought, go to an American school, which will help me get a student visa, allow me to stay and be able to work. So that was the path I took. I graduated, I moved straight to New York, and within 6 months of being there, I got a job with a guy named Duro, who owns Desert Storm Records, partners with DJ Clue, and signed Fabulous. And among other things, he's an incredible mix engineer and producer and business person. So I got an internship with him, and I started interning. And my first client after months of interning was Fabulous. I became his engineer, and I did 2 albums and countless mixtapes and went on tour with them and did the whole deal. And then through that, I met Beyonce, or the team around Beyonce. Then switched over and started working with her. And then when I finished with her, I had an interesting lull in my career, because what I realized, when you work for an artist like Beyonce, you put all your eggs in one basket. There's no other way to do it.
Right.
And prior to working with her, I had probably 20 different clients in New York who were all booking me on a regular basis for different things. So I was actually fairly busy before Beyonce. But I decided, like, you can't miss out on that opportunity. I took the Beyonce gig. But what happened was, as we were working on the record, all of my other clients who were used to working with me, they couldn't get me anymore, because I was with her, and they would try to book me. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in with her. Like, I still want to work with you. I just, like, it's got to be on moments when I have some time.
Right. That's right there.
And yeah, and that's like sort of an unfair situation to put an artist in. So at that point, they need to find another engineer who's like reliable, who can be there for them. And I obviously wasn't that. So by the time we finished the Beyonce record, I thought, oh man, I just worked on this amazing album. It's going to be up for a Grammy. It'll, like, it's going to be this big deal. I'm going to be so busy. My phone's going to be ringing. And it was the complete opposite. My phone was like silent, because everybody who I had worked with before, they felt like I was locked in with her. There was no room to work with other people. So I actually went through this lull, this gap of a few years where I was trying to figure it out. And I decided that I would refocus my career, not on being a recording engineer, but being a mix engineer or a producer. So I started focusing on that. And then my first clients through that, just through mutual friends, were the Chainsmokers. And that kind of set up a lot of other things, because the success that we kind of created there led to BTS and all these other artists that I got to work with. So that's like the very condensed version of my career.
Now, how do you decide on, or how do you choose the sound for each of these artists? Because now a lot of people may say you do have the up and coming artists now that their sound sounds a little bit similar, but I've heard a lot of your records and they sound very different, but you make it harmonious in a sense
Right.
that it could definitely be used over and over again. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's universal.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the sound that an artist creates is always a collaborative thing. I'm never going to sit here and try to take credit for how the Chainsmokers sound. I can take partial credit, but at the end of the day, Drew is an incredible producer, and he knows how to make a record. And my job in that scenario is to support his creative process. So if he's making a record, our process with the Chainsmokers typically was, he might come up with an idea, and then he would play me the track or the song idea against the track, and then I'll listen to it and say, okay, this is awesome, but maybe that drum sound should change, because that drum doesn't really work. That kick drum doesn't really work with the bass and the 808 or whatever else we have going on in the record. So I would sort of like help steer him in the right direction as far as like sound choices. And then I might add a few of my own things and whatever. And then, we get a final record. But I certainly can't sit here and say, like, I create the sound of Beyonce. I create the sound of Chainsmokers. They are who they are. They have their aesthetic. And then my job is to come in and just support the creative process. And in doing that, I, of course, inject a little bit of my own creative aesthetic into it as well. So it's always collaborative. There is no one wizard who's controlling the whole situation,
And so you work with Beyonce, you work with Rihanna, you work with Jay-Z, Fabulous.
Yep.
Like the young people will understand that one. But
Yep.
And what were they like in the studio? Even though you've already mentioned you Well, you definitely told us the length about Beyonce being in the studio, her work ethic. What about Jay-Z? What about like Rihanna? Is there like a whole, I guess, do they turn all the lights off and they're like, don't look at me while I do?
No. Everyone's got their own like little thing. You know, I'm one of the biggest Jay-Z fans. I love what Jay does musically, his entire career. From a business standpoint, I really kind of look up to him as far as how he's diversified his business, and you know, I have a number of businesses myself, and I'm kind of always aspiring to be like that. So I'm a huge Jay-Z fan, and I was a big Jay-Z fan well before I, you know, to be honest, cared, you know, about Beyonce. You know, like I grew up on Jay-Z, and so now I don't want to say I had worked with him in the past prior to working with Beyonce. I had met him in the past prior to working with Beyonce, but it was always through my mentor, Duro, who mixed a lot of Jay-Z music. So I would meet Jay-Z through that. But we weren't friends. It was like I was the guy sitting, the quiet engineer sitting in the back just observing, right? Although, you know, I did tell a story in 2006. It was the first time I met Jay-Z, and he was like, he really gave me this, like, we exchanged a few words, and it really had a lasting impact on me in a positive way. And so I always like, I just love that. Cause you know, when sometimes you meet somebody that you look up to and you're like, oh man, they just really ruined what I thought they were. He was the complete opposite. He totally lived up and surpassed any expectation I had for how great of a person he was. So anyways, I got to work with him myself directly, one-on-one, like recording him through Beyonce. And that's actually how the Rihanna thing happened. You know, I recorded his verse on Talk That Talk. But I had also met Rihanna once before. She came to another studio session of mine, totally unrelated to Jay and Beyonce, just another session I was in. And she just hung out. We didn't record her, just she hung out in the studio, and I think we had a few drinks, and she was just like hanging out in the studio, listening to some new producers and their work. So yeah, but we ended up doing that Talk That Talk record with Jay.
Damn.
So everyone's got their own vibe in the studio, I would say. Jay like kind of zones out, watches sports, scratches his head a little bit while he's like thinking of, you know, a verse, and then he's just ready. Like, and it's true. Like, he doesn't write anything down. He's just got it in his head. He's thinking about it, memorizing it. He might be watching a college basketball game. I think that's what we were doing when we did Talk That Talk. And then when he's ready, he's just like, you know, Swiv, I'm ready to go. Mic on. Mic's already on. I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. He jumps in the booth, 2 takes, done. He's the easiest, by far the easiest person to work with, because like it's basically like very little effort to record Jay.
Now, you said you have multiple businesses. What are those businesses, if you don't mind me asking?
So obviously, you know, everything starts at its core with my production, writing, and mixing business.
Right.
But then everything sort of expands from there. So I have a publishing company and a record label. I have a tech company called Skio Music, which is like a remix platform, skiomusic.com. You can go check it out. It's a remix platform. It allows like young creators to like take stems from other songs and legally remix them. And you actually are granted the rights to share the remix, which has always been a problem on the internet. So that's what we do over at Skio. And then I have my plugin business where it's my software business, and I build plugins and tools for other producers and engineers like myself. And we make, you know, great tools to help with the creative process. And we also have sample packs and other things like that. So that's like a few of the businesses. And then I have a venture capital side to what I do, where I invest in new businesses that I'm excited about. So.
Are there any up-and-coming artists that you are looking to work with that may be flying under the radar and you're just looking to just scoop them up?
Ooh, who are some of the artists right now? Well, I'm working with this artist, Rema, right now, who's amazing. He's from Nigeria, Afro beats. He calls it Afro rave, his style of Afro beats. But like I've loved working with him, and he's like, I'm so excited about the music that he puts out. I feel like he just can't miss. Every song he drops, I feel like is like a vibe. Who else? Like young artists that I'm excited about right now. You know, you're kind of putting me on the spot. I'm trying to think of like who are the up and coming artists that like really like I'm excited about. There's this one guy who I follow on Instagram. His name is Sam Ryder, I think. And his Instagram account's like Wolf Hair. Anyways, he's like maybe one of the best singers, like technical singers I've ever heard. And I've never worked with the guy, but super talented. Would love to do something with him. And his name's Sam Ryder, Ryder. I think it's Wolf Hair Rider or something is his Instagram account. Go check him out. Incredible singer. So there's one name that I can think of.
Will you like be releasing an EP or even like a little mixtape of your beats?
Any of my stuff?
Yes.
You know, I've thought about that. I have a lot of songs that I've written that are just kind of sitting on hard drives or being shopped around and things like that. And I've like felt like more and more over the last few years, like maybe I should just like put some of these out as like a producer project. But to be honest, I'm focused. I have so many other things that my hands are in that to take on the responsibility and the time and effort of an artist project, it's a lot. Like to be out there and be promoting a project, and it's a significant amount of work. And I just feel like right now I would be probably spread a little too thin to be able to commit the necessary time to it. That would be something that, you know, if the right situation came about, I would do it. But for now, I'm cool just writing music and, you know, sharing it with artists and things like that.
Are there any artists that you would like to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Oh, there's always two. Well, there's always one, and there's definitely a second that I can think of right off the top of my head. Dr. Dre is the biggest one. He was probably the single largest inspiration for me to get into music. When I heard the Chronic 2001 album, it changed my perception of what music could be. And I know that sounds like really weird and existential or something, but that album was just so far ahead of its time sonically. If you listen, that album came out in 1999. If you listen to the other records that came out in 1999, and then you listen to Chronic 2001, it just feels so different. It feels so much further ahead of the curve. And when I heard that, I didn't even know what engineering was at the time. I just knew like something was different about this, and I need to figure that out. Like, why is his record sound so much different? And he's also the one. I have this like in my hallway out here. I have this Mount Rushmore of music producers. I had 4 hand-drawn portraits done of my 4 people who are my largest inspirations, and it's Quincy Jones, Dr. Dre, Pharrell, and Babyface.
Ooh, yes.
Those are my 4. I'm not claiming that they're the best. I'm just saying those are my 4 that inspired me the most. If there was a few others, I might throw Kanye on there and probably Max Martin or something like that. But those are my 4. And I've had the privilege of working with and or hanging out with all of them. I've hung out with Quincy Jones a few times, and he's dropped gems. I've had 30-40 minute conversations with him, and he's like the most brilliant, coolest guy in the world. I've worked with Pharrell, and I've worked with Babyface actually on the Beyonce album 4. And so Dre is the only one that I have never connected with. And so I always say he's like the one person I would still to this day go intern for, unpaid. Let me take out your trash. Just give me an opportunity to sit and try to understand what is in his brain that makes him hear music differently. And then the other one,
if you're listening,
Dre, if you're listening, holler at me. I'll take your trash out. And then the other one is like more just an art, like a group who I really respect and think make amazing music. And that's the 1975. I think the 1975 is just like super fresh in their approach to production, and they make really good, catchy pop records. But at the same time, the production feels like it just feels like they really took their time with it. It doesn't feel like a recycled pop hit. It feels like, oh, you turned a catchy record, but like a really musical landscape and all these like interesting sound effects. You turned all this weird stuff into something that should be on the radio, which I think is a really hard thing to do. And I think they do it really well. So the 1975 would be the other one.
Let's see. Is there anything that you're working on coming up? It doesn't matter. It doesn't really have to do with music, but what other things are you working on?
So we have a new plugin that I'm working on now that should be out hopefully in the next few months, I think. And, you know, obviously just continuing to build the publishing company and looking for more writers and producers who I can help develop. And, you know, and then I'm doing a lot on the tech side of you know, there's education things and all of this would be sort of tech plays, building out platforms that would allow people to sort of experience maybe more of what I do in a more maybe holistic way rather than just like a YouTube video here or a Twitch video here. And then the other thing is like, I've been really focused on building my YouTube and my Twitch. I've kind of taken a short break from YouTube for the moment just to get Twitch up and running. And then eventually we'll have a cadence of both going. But yeah, just building out the more public persona a bit.
Will you ever be a professor of music? At full
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because I think there's just much larger opportunities. I've done plenty of master classes and like I've gone and done events and master class at NYU and at Full Sail and at SAE and a bunch of schools, really, Berkeley. But I think you know, that's something I would do like periodically, but I just think my energy is best spent on building things, building new, whether it's new technology stuff in music or more plugins or more instruments or things like that. I think I like building things and sitting in an office, you know, with a 9 to 5 or whatever teaching
Right.
it does not really excite me. So
grading papers.
yeah. Never liked having a boss. So unless I'm going to be the CEO or president of the school, I don't know if that's going to work.
Now, a few of the students came to me to ask me this. I don't know why, but they were so eager for this because it's been everywhere. Like even if Beyonce does this with her face, it's like, oh my goodness, it's a new album. So I'm asking you, DJ Swivel.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
What about Rihanna? Is she making new music anytime soon?
Well, the rumor is Rihanna's been made the follow-up to Anti has been recorded and re-recorded and scrapped and re-recorded like multiple times. That's what I've heard, but I have no firsthand knowledge of this. I don't know anyone in Rihanna's camp who has told me this. I just know that, you know, because you meet a lot of producers, you know, your contemporaries and people you work with, and you know, a lot of them end up getting cuts. Oh, Rihanna just cut my song last week. Oh, she cut this song last week. But I've been hearing that for 3-4 years now. So then at one point I heard a story that she had a whole album. I think she may have even mentioned it. She had a whole album that was done that she ultimately scrapped. And then she re-recorded a whole new album that was done. And I don't know if that's what's going to come out or if they're scrapping that and building another one. I'm sure at some point she will come out with new music. I have no idea when. It's the truth.
And how did you get the name DJ Swivel? Swivel.
How did I get the name DJ Swivel? It's honestly, it's not like this like beautiful story. You know, in high school, I got turntables and, you know, I played a bunch of instruments and, you know, I really fell in love with like DJing. A friend of mine put me on to DJing and I got my own turntables and started like messing around and messing with it. And then I started going out to parties like when I was 16 years old or whatever, started going out to these all ages parties at nightclubs that, you know, they don't serve alcohol, but whatever, you just go hang out. You usually just bring your own alcohol on the way. But anyways, so we would go to these all ages parties and there was one company that promoted like the biggest parties in the city. And they were called New Life. And I went to one of these parties and still a friend of mine to this day, DJ Baby U. He was a big DJ in Toronto and then he moved to Atlanta and he became Young Jeezy's DJ. Now he lives in LA and he's DJing radio and doing all sorts of stuff. When I stayed till the end of the night, the lights are on, he's packing up his stuff, and I walk up to him. I was like, hey, I want to DJ too. How do I start? How do I get into it? I have my turntables. How do I get into your booth there? And he's like, see that guy over there? Go talk to him. That's my manager. He runs the company that promotes these parties. I was like, oh, great. So I went and talked to this guy, Neil, and he said, yeah, do you want to promote some parties for us? Like hand out flyers. You just go to nightclubs. We'll give you a box of flyers and you just like stand outside and hand people flyers. This is before Facebook and the internet. This is like 2002, 2001, maybe 1 or 2. Yeah. And, I was like, for sure, I'll totally do that. So I started handing out flyers for a few months. And then he called me one day and was like, all right, we have this all ages party coming up. Do you want to DJ it? And I said, sure. He's like, all right, cool. Just tell me what name I should put on the flyer. And I was like, oh, I don't have a DJ name. Damn, I got to think of something. So I just sat and thought about a bunch of names and crossed off ones I didn't like and circled the ones I liked. And eventually I landed on DJ Swivel. So nobody gave me the name. I gave it to myself. There's no like clever story other than I was asked to DJ a party and didn't have a DJ name. And I didn't want to use my own name. So I just came up with something and it stuck. Yeah, that's it. That's the story.
I like how straightforward you was. You like, I gave myself the name. Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth, right?
Right.
It's all part of the bigger story. So
okay, so at TSU, we have the RTF program. We also have an engineering production program. Is there any encouragement of words that you would like to give to the students?
Sure. When I graduated Full Sail, the most important thing for me was moving to a city where the artists that I wanted to work with worked. And at the time, that was New York, right? I loved hip hop music and New York was the center of it at that time. And very quickly after I moved to New York, it started shifting to Atlanta and Miami. But in any event, at that time, New York was like the Mecca and everybody was in New York. And so I always tell students, I see this a lot. Students will graduate school and then they'll just stay in their hometown. And the problem with that is you're never going to work with the artists you want to work with if you're stuck in your hometown. You have to go to Los Angeles. You have to go to Atlanta. You have to go to Miami. You have to go to Nashville, wherever those artists are. And New York, there's still some people working in New York, but I think New York is kind of, it's certainly not the creative hub it once was when I started in New York. It's changed a lot. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice is like, if you really want to do it and you want to do it for real, you got to leave the nest. You have to move to the place where the most opportunity is. And right now that just happens to be Los Angeles and Atlanta, and maybe to a slightly lesser extent, Miami. And then you have New York. And if you like, rock music or country music or anything in that sphere, you can go to Nashville, and Nashville has a big music hub as well. And I don't even want to say Nashville is only rock and country. There's EDM artists in Nashville. There's lots of artists in Nashville, but primarily known for country and rock music. So.
And where can people find you? I need all your social media, including Twitch, Twitter, everything.
Twitter, everything is at DJ Swivel. Instagram at DJ Swivel. Twitter at DJ Swivel. DJSwivel.com has everything. There's a link tree or whatever on my or a social tap on my Instagram that has all the links to everything that I'm doing and focused on. So YouTube/DJ Swivel, it's all there. I'm not hard to find.
Thank you so much for chilling with the Weekend Takeover. Your girl J.Renae. This has been DJ.
Thank you, J.Renae. Appreciate it.
I chunk up the juice for the south and the north. Boys talking down and boys gonna